what you gone done. Oh, see rider, see what you gone done. See rider, see what you gone done. I have had symptoms of COVID for 288 days. That's about 9.5 months. I was really burning the candle on both ends for a lot of years. And so while on one hand, we think about my school closed on around March 17th, I think. So leading up to being sick on April 6th, I was doing great. I was sleeping so much, and eating really good food. I was having dance parties in my little RV. I was only doing safe distanced walks outside with friends. I was acknowledging both that I have asthma as well as I'm just that kid that gets sick all the time too. I was on a walk and noticed this weird little dry cough. At night, I woke up and had severe shortness of breath. But again, as an asthmatic, this is a thing that happens to me quite frequently, and also at night. But I reached over for my inhaler and took a puff, and it didn't do anything. And that was alarming because never in my life has my albuterol failed me before. And so I think that it's interesting how I'm lucky in some ways that I've had asthma all my life, because I haven't panicked in a way that I'm sure a lot of people do when they suddenly can't breathe and they've never not breathed well before. So I actually knew how to okay, I have to sleep sitting up mostly, prop my pillows up and open up my breathing chambers. And I did that and hardly got sleep and woke up in the morning and it was still the case. When I went in, they definitely asked me questions that, as someone who doesn't suffer from anxiety, I sometimes feel annoyed when that comes up and they're kind of assuming that I'm having a panic attack instead of having the symptoms that I'm having. But I did get a test right away because of my asthma. So I was tested the first night, but on the second night when they came in, the nurse wasn't wearing his mask, and he's like, I love doing this. Do you notice anything different about me? And I was like, why aren't you wearing your mask? And he's like, you're negative. Woo! Yeah, I was like, no, don't you know 40% of these tests are false negatives, I knew that. Why don't you know that, And he's like, oh, but your lung x-rays looked good and your, blood tests look good. And so we really don't think you have it. So that's absolutely what led me to not believe that this is what was going on at first, And so they sent me home even with no treatment. I think they upped my asthma meds, which did nothing. And for the next 6 weeks, I was holed up in this little RV and all by myself. And people in my community would bring me food and drop it at the bottom of the ramp on my porch, and phone calls and things like that. When I got sick again, I went into the hospital, and I was like, hey, so recently I learned about this long COVID thing. I think I'm one of those people because I'm experiencing these symptoms. And they're like, no, you never tested positive, so no. I'm like, wait, but do you hear about how these tests aren't all effective? It just was both frustrating to not be believed, as well as there's this whole thing with being a long hauler, and I know it's the same with a ton of chronic illnesses, of this journey of being gaslit and having people not believe you, and then you attending the support groups and reading up on all the research. It's just you already feel like crap, and then on top of that you have to do the research that your doctor's not doing. The point of which I felt like I had no symptoms for 3 days, I kind of started to pick up my life again, and spent June and July in a pretty normal way, other than insane UTIs and tooth infections, of which the tooth infection had me in bed for an entire week at one point. But then in addition to that, also I was ignoring my fatigue because I'm used to so much fatigue from being a burnt out educator, overworked educator. And so I would have 5 pretty normal days and then sleep all weekend long. Or there was a time where someone asked me how I was doing, and I was like, well, I take an hour or two nap every day, but in my mind that's normal, because on my days off, that's what happens when you work 60 hours a week. You sleep a lot on your days off. And then I kind of threw myself, as I was feeling better, into the next steps for my career, and kind of started reenacting all of the behaviors that had already like beat my health down, and was obsessing about, I'm going to start a nonprofit of my own. I'm going to open up some kind of education program, and was really getting the wheels spinning, doing research, doing networking. And then it's like, I don't want to be too woo, but I almost like feel like I heard a message being like, nope, it's not the time right now, Emily, set that down, and you need to be patient with this. And literally the next week, the rug was completely pulled out from underneath me. By August, I had tested negative twice for COVID and once for antibodies, and then also all of the x-rays, CT scans, blood tests looked pretty darn good and not concerning for COVID. Pulmonary specialist said to me, I'm going to put you on this steroid inhaler because we're just going to have to assume it's asthma. And I said, okay, well, when is it going to work? And he said, I don't want you to ask me that. And I was like, and he said, okay, in less than a year. And I was like, what? Like, what is the point then? Like, can't we try something else or look into something else? And then I found my current PCP, who is also a naturopath, and right away she started me on her treatment plan. I'll never forget that in my first session with her, she said, I think I can have you feeling better in 6 weeks. During our first appointment, the whole time I was telling my story, she was just like nodding her head. It was a video thing, so I could see, she was just nodding her head. And at the end of it, she said, you're a textbook case of long COVID, and I just like cried with relief, because here is someone who believed me. Here's someone who had ideas of where to go next, because it just had been, up to that point, I think that was 7 months of being like, like, yeah. Before I met my current doctor, who I've been seeing since December, absolutely nothing worked. They were just pushing stronger and stronger steroids on me. It's my bag of drugs. It's a whole thing, twice a day. Having to say, yes, I absolutely can be there at 9 on Wednesday is just, it's impossible. As well as, I don't know if you can tell or not, but my cognitive function is significantly different than what it normally is. And I was talking about my summer with a friend a few weeks ago, and I said the thing about backpacking for 4 days, and he said, oh, where'd you go? I couldn't remember one scene from that 4 days. I couldn't remember anyone I went with. Yeah, it was really terrifying, actually. Only when I got on Facebook and looked at my pictures could I remember, oh, it was in Washington. Yeah, it was in the Olympic National Forest. And yeah, folks I know with different post-viral conditions say the brain fog doesn't lift for 2 to 3 years sometimes. Like a lot of the symptoms that fall under my new diagnosis of POTS, in addition, which was caused by COVID, a lot of people don't recover, is what the research says, but those who do, sometimes it's over many years. So I'm really buckling down for the long haul, Yeah, so I'm really hoping that there's some way, even if I have some level of symptoms that I have to deal with for years on, that I can use this opportunity, challenge to make healthier choices moving forward.